All right, if you are watching the runoff in Georgia and you're concerned about crime rates, let's take a look at what the current junior senator in Georgia has to say about law enforcement.
So in Ferguson, police power showing up in a kind of gangster and thug mentality. You know how you can wear all kinds of colors and be a thug. You can sometimes wear the colors of the state and behave like a thug.
Kind of amazing there. Hands up, don't shoot turned out to be total bunk. It was a total hoax. Doesn't matter. Riots ensued and Democrats encouraged it. But now they say things like, we're not for defund the police. We're not anti-cop. We're not encouraging violence against local law enforcement. My next guest is an attorney and former law enforcement officer himself, Mike Pugliese. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
I just react to that. That's Senator Raphael Warnock calling police thugs wearing state colors.
That is absolutely disgusting. I tell you, words can't even describe that. You know, let me tell you, police officers, we understand that we're political pawns. We understand that's been for centuries. But now in the 21st century, statements like that from politicians has demonized police officers. You have made victims out of the real thugs, the ones out there that not only want to kill cops, but want to absolutely hurt citizens, go out and harm citizens. And this is the fine blue line. This is the guardians between good and bad. This is the guardians between evil and absolute goodness. And you have your cops out there. And what are the perks for being a cop nowadays? The perks are, gee whiz, we're going to demonize you. We're going to take away qualified immunity and put your assets on the line. We're going to probably prosecute you if we think that we can get a vote out of it. And also, we're going to give you a beanbag gun to go out and take on cartel members and maybe assign a social worker to ride along with you. Absolutely ludicrous. I wouldn't have the job. And that's why recruitment is down. Normally, you have 30 plus officers as recruits in academies out here. Now they're carrying 7 to 8 here in our local community here in Atlanta. We can't get enough officers. They don't want to. They're retiring early. They're quitting. They don't want the job. And who can blame them? It's absolutely horrible. And the citizens are going to pay. They don't realize that, but it's coming. That's why we're seeing the increase in crime. It's just absolutely horrible.
You know, it's funny. After January 6th, they took the wet eraser and just cleared the chalkboard of everything they said about cops and turned and took the chalkboard. Republicans hate cops because of January 6th. I don't know a single conservative Republican who stands with people who would do what was done to Capitol Police on that day. We've said from day one, as a matter of fact, I can play the tape of myself as it was happening when I was live on the radio. I'm like, this is really bad. This is really bad. Please, for the love of God, don't do this. There's nobody that I know, not a single prominent conservative, who says what happened to those police officers on January 6th was a good thing and should go unpunished. Everyone who commits a crime like that should be punished.
Absolutely. Listen, we believe, and I'm speaking for officers, and also as an attorney, we believe in the absolute rule of law. You do the crime, you do the punishment that comes with it. But the rippling effects of this defund the police movement, you can yell all day long. These politicians can get fancy and say, no, I never was for that, when we know absolutely they were. But the rippling effects is going to be 10 years down the making. You need to look at the real agenda here. Is it to totally dismantle local law enforcement and create a federal law enforcement? Is that what they're after? If so, let's approach that. Let's deal with that. We see what happens when you have a national police force go amok. We're dealing with that in the FBI. Do we really want that in America? Or do we want to keep our local sheriffs that know the community, know what the people want, and the people trust these people? We don't need to further make enemies out of the police officers. They are there. They're the fine line. They're going to protect our freedoms.
You know what I don't understand is in some of these cities where they have completely out of control crime rates, they still vote for Democrats for city council and Democrats for mayor and Democrats for their state representatives and their federal representatives. It's like no matter how bad it gets, these people will never stop voting for the people who just sit idly by while the crime rate increases.
And I can continue to scream out here to the public. You know, I speak with these lieutenants out here that supervise police officers. They are telling their officers, do not make vehicle pullovers. Don't stop police. Don't stop cars out there. You know why? Because we don't have the manpower. We can't afford to lose one or two cars when we're 14 men short on a shift. Now that's going to affect your responding to complaints, responding to calls. This is going to affect citizens. When you need an officer ASAP and they're going to be 15 minutes late getting to you because they just can't, they don't have enough men to get there. That's the problem out there. And on top of that, we're losing quality officers. When you're losing detectives and you got to take them out of investigations and put them on the street because you don't have enough manpower, who's going to do your homicide investigations? Who's going to do your forensic investigations? Who's going to be your SWAT officers? Who's going to be your hostage negotiator? Who's going to be your accident reconstructionist? You lose all of that, and they're actually leaving the department. They're retiring in droves. Normally, you lose about 100 officers a year in a metro-sized police department. They're losing them at 300 to 400 a year now, they just don't want the job. And let's talk about qualified immunity and what people understand what that is. It means an officer can be sued for anything that they deem justified to sue him for. In other words, what is the incentive? Not only you go out there and put your life on the line, but you're also putting your personal assets on the line and that of your family. Plus, you can be demonized in the press. Even if how many times we show where an officer's actually justified after he's been run through the media? How many times we go back and show this guy's really was a good guy, he was justified what he did? You never hear those stories. All you want to hear is he did wrong, it causes a ruckus, it gets me a vote, and that's the end of it. No responsibility to the public. You want to put it all on the police officer. Too much. He can't burden that much.
Yeah, I can't imagine why a young person, thinking about how they might serve their community, whether it's military or whatever, would look and go, you know what, I want to be a metropolitan police. I mean, I get NYPD guys that hand in their badges and head to Florida and work in a small town where people actually like you, or a small town in Tennessee where people actually like you. They buy you a cup of coffee. They say, how you doing? They know your name. I mean, I don't blame anyone who says, you know what? I don't want to be Atlanta PD anymore. I don't want to be Baltimore PD anymore. I don't want to be NYPD anymore. I can't imagine why anyone would want to be a Philadelphia police officer or a Chicago police officer.
Listen, I was proud to wear the badge. The badge meant something to me. And I'm going to tell you, most of the officers I deal with right now, it's the same feeling. They want to get out there. They want to protect the public. They want to serve the public. And unfortunately, it's gotten where they've been demonized. Most of your community policing involves this cooperation, this relationship that is fostered between the police officer and the public. But when you have the media and you have politicians like what we just heard from Warnock driving a wedge between policing, calling them thugs. He's calling you these guys that put their life on the line as being gang mentality, that they're thugs. Now, obviously, that is going to drive a wedge right between community policing and actual officers being able to do the job. I worked narcotics for years. A lot of my narcotics bust came from good investigations, but it also came from the actual community members telling me, hey, go watch over here, go look over here. Well, all that's stopping. And then on toppling that with the fact that if you make a bad judgment call, you might have to hire a local lawyer to represent you because you're probably going to be criminally charged, like we're seeing, just like in the case in Atlanta, where the officer was charged not because he did wrong, he was protecting his life, but because they wanted to make a political pawn out of him and use him for an election. That's what it was for. It was just to foster themselves in garnering enough votes, and they're saying, look, I'm going after law enforcement. And that's unfortunate. And what they're going to do, we're losing our law enforcement. Like I said, it's a rippling effect. It is causing the law enforcement now is just going downhill. And pretty soon, we're not going to have our local cops to go to and protect us. And then we're going to, what are you going to do? We're going to be self-preservation, trying to protect ourselves.
That's what the truth is.
Of course, they want to take our guns away from us.
The Democrats who drive this anti-cop narrative live in the nicest neighborhoods, right? They live in the toniest suburbs. Some of them live in gated communities behind gated mansions, and they have private security. It's amazing how easy it is for them to say, yeah, who cares? Who cares how the streets are where you live?